All right, so if you're having trouble with lunging, whether it's forward stepping lunge or reverse lunge, I want you to scale back, ignore what's in your program and work on split squats, because finding stability and strength in single leg split stance squats is the foundation for a good lunge. So I want to emphasize that you should work where your body is learning, and overreaching and having a lunge that's unstable, either because your torso is toppling side to side or your knee collapses inward, or you find that you're stuttering your lunge, you can't make it a smooth, controlled movement, I would say pause on that, pull back and work on split squats and some of the things that go into a good split squat. So now, with the split squat, my video demonstrates very large range of motion because I have good hip mobility, good single leg stability and balance. If this is too much for you, okay, what you're gonna do, number one, is shorten up a little bit. Make this a less of a wide stance and worry less about being big and deep. Think mostly about mastering a more shallow pattern movement at first. The other thing is, for better stability, widen this way. Your railroad tracks that your feet sit in may need to widen out. So don't be narrow, widen out. Make sure your feet are both facing forward like they are in railroad tracks, because if this back foot is turned outward, guess where your hips are gonna go? And if you're trying to move this way, but your hips are facing that way, you're gonna be unstable. So now that we've discussed where your feet should be and how you should work on maybe a more shallow pattern movement first, let's talk about two areas that we need to look at very carefully, because often if the knee is toppling inward or the hips don't remain level, the problem isn't where people typically think about the problem. Often it's either the foot or this outer glute area. I say outer, I mean this back pocket area. So if you imagine putting your hand into your back pocket, this cluster of muscles that are here. This keeps things stable, these two areas. So looking at them in turn, if you work in bare feet, what do you notice about your feet? Are the toes properly splayed? Because they serve as a base of support. If you have a bunion or your toes are scrunched together and not spread apart, it's pretty hard to find stability, right? So you're gonna spread your toes and manually, if you need to, practice getting that big toe out to the side and finding space between your toes. Then when you work, can you find pressure through the base of the first toe, the base of the fifth toe, and the heel equally? Or are you all on the outside? Are you all on the inside? Are you all on the ball of your foot versus the heel? Find stability through that tripod. Do your toes scrunch? If they do, chances are you have weak foot muscles. If you feel a lot of tension in the front of your leg here, shin, again, probably you're finding stability through other muscles where it should come from the foot, and you would do well to do foot strengthening exercises. And I'm going to elaborate a little bit on this in other videos, and I have done. So if this is an area of work, please reach out and I'll send you the videos I do have. All that said, you want to feel active through the arch of your foot. So you want to pull up that arch. Imagine that this is my foot. I'm just kind of trying to pull up the arch without scrunching my toes, without losing the splay, and without putting too much strain on the front of the shin. That may feel like a tall order for some people, but that's an indication that your work needs to come from foot strength and stability. The next area we're going to talk about is this hip complex. The outer hip, the glute pocket here, has two muscle groups I want to highlight that can be tight and very weak and cause the knee to collapse inward when you descend. The outer group of muscles is the glute medius and minimus, and they are abductors. They keep the leg there, they move the leg out, okay? If they're weak, the leg collapses inward. You get this internal rotation happening in the movement. So you want to think about strengthening, or at least finding those muscles first. And then the deep, deep layer are the hip rotators. So again, if you collapse into valgus with your knee as you descend, there is no external rotation strength there, right? So those are found here. And I'm going to highlight something I want you to work on to try and lengthen what might be tight. If you can't lengthen a muscle, you can't strengthen a muscle, and they can be holding a lot of tension. Here's how you're going to find them and tell them to lengthen. I'm going to video from the side. I want you to, again, take a very narrow stance. It's almost like we're not split stance. We're not split squatting anymore. This is a separate little warm-up to find your glutes. You're going to really shorten up this, okay? It's almost like you're standing on one leg and then just simply placing that back leg down on the ground behind you a little bit for stability. Most of your weight is on the front foot. You just put that one down as a kickstand. Now, what you're going to do is hinge. I don't want your knee to bend here. I want you to think about pushing the hip back and put your hand on your glute there and see if you can sit into your palm. And this, by virtue of extending or lengthening the glute, will help you discover that muscle and then contract it to come out. Notice that my knee angle isn't shifting in this exercise. I'm simply trying to find length through that glute. You should feel your sit bone length or tip back. If you touch the sit bone, it should kind of lift and push backwards. So lift and push backwards. If you feel the fleshy part of your glute, you should feel a sensation of length under your hand. And that, my friends, is hinging properly, and it's part of squatting, but without the knee, okay? So here we are, and come back up. Practicing just that might help you find awareness in this area. Then if you've mastered that, you're going to take it a little step further with a hinge and a rotation. So then you're going to come back to square and come up from the side. What am I doing? Hinging, as I said, and then rotate so that you close the angle between this hip and that leg. Close that angle. Hinge, rotate. Lengthen what is effectively those deep hip rotators. Come back out and come up. For some people, that'll be really challenging, so just work on the hinge initially until you've mastered that, this split stance hinge, and then eventually you can find how to rotate the pelvis and close the space between this hip and that leg. Boom, and then open. Boom, open. All right? Now, the last thing I'm going to leave you with is, if you come back to your shallow split squat, remember, we're working at a shallower depth. We're not worrying about getting super deep right now if we can't really control it. We're thinking about level hips, and we're thinking about a knee that tracks over the middle of the foot, so that when you're bending your knee and coming down into a squat pattern movement, that you can still see, you have a line of sight on that big toe. If the minute you bend your knee, you lose a sight line on the big toe, you have excess movement this way. Here's what I want you to try. Set up with a light resistance band attached to a post, and you can place your leg into it. Okay, whoops, wrong leg. I want to set it up so that effectively it's pulling my knee exactly where I don't want it to go, inward. So this, we're anchoring the foot, splaying the toes, activating the arch. We're doing a shallow split stance. We're not trying to go deep here. We're just trying to initiate the movement with pressure that we have to counteract on a band. The band is yanking me in. If I don't put any outward pressure, then I collapse inward. This forces me to bring awareness, to externally rotate and abduct my leg. Now I'm going to bend and extend. Bend and extend. Bend and extend. It's just a little movement, but I need to get this part right or else the rest won't go well. And certainly then the lunge won't go well either. So if I can get this where I can now see my toe through this initial part of the flex and I'm pulling against it effectively, whoa, what you should feel is quite a lighting up of some of the muscles back in that back pocket area. Okay, so without making this video too long, I want you to give those things a try if you're someone who's struggling with those split stance movements. And certainly if you're someone struggling with a lunge, pull back please. Okay, let me know what you think, and yeah, keep working.